It's the Racing Postcast, brought to you by the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. And oh yes, it's good to be back on this Super Saturday of racing. We've got 9 races to cover, and we've also got the Irish Derby from the Curragh on Sunday. And there's some really interesting races coming up and some competitive races to get stuck into. As always, do subscribe, comment, and get those likes in on this video. An excellent week of racing last week. Loads of content. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button. It's free to do so. Let's see if we can get this week's Racing Postcast to 100 likes. So if you're watching on YouTube, who can you see on your screens this week? We have our betting editor, Keith Melrose. We have our Irish handicapper, Jonny Pearson. And as always, it's good to be back with Mr. Ed Nicholson after 8 months off of me rambling on about French horses on this show. I am back. Ed, just a quick one from a Unibet standpoint. You mentioned last week on the show that Royal Ascot could be a good one for the punters. From a Unibet standpoint, was it?
Well, first of all, I thought we got Ollie Mers on the postcast, but it's actually Sam Hart. I think the first 3 days were Punterville, especially the Thursday with 5 winning favourites. But it turned on the Friday and the Saturday, and Unibet made a bit of money. In the end, it was a good festival for the bookies. Turnover and actives were similar to last year, which is also encouraging. We've seen dips in many of the festivals over the last 12 months on both turnover and active. So, yeah, pretty good. And for a racing point of view, it was a fantastic occasion. I think I was at the course on the Tuesday and Wednesday. It seemed to be packed and everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves. So hopefully racing on the up.
It was a proper week of racing, I have to say. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And just quickly, we've got so much racing to get through, gents, but I did just want to get just a standout performance from yourselves for the week. Keith, I'll start with you. So many great performances, but who stood out for you?
Well, the obvious two are the two big Gosden performances, Field of Gold and Ombudsman, but I don't tend to go for the obvious, and I'm not going to put them up. I thought Merchant in the King George V was pretty exceptional. I've backed him for the Ledger, 20-1. It was a fast finish coupled with a pretty good overall time. Same sort of route that Desert Hero took for the same yard a couple of years back. He went on to finish third in the Ledger. I just think that Merchant's going to go on to much better things.
Yeah, he was really impressive. It seems like, listening to the plans, they could potentially be heading to Goodwood for the Gordon Stakes next, which can often be quite a good trial for the Ledger. Jonny Pearson, I know you're a big fan of some of the French performances as well. There weren't too many, a lot of French hypes during the week, but they didn't quite come off. But at the end of the week, we had Lazat. He has to be up there.
Yeah, I think it was a standout performance for me. He was one of my he would have been one of my top 5 selections, but I was just concerned about whether he'd handle the ground or not, and he put those doubts firmly to rest. But I thought he was just much the best sprinter out. I mean, obviously then it's not a vintage crop of sprinters, is pretty obvious with the American Fair winning on the Tuesday, wasn't it? But that just looks a level above most of them. And the Japanese horse, obviously, Frank performed really nicely. Of those to not win, I thought Sings the Song in the same colour as Wathnam was definitely one to watch out for next time. I haven't been far too far back and finished well off the pace, and it's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And Field of Gold, I mean, he's the obvious one to talk about, Ed, and Unibet are currently 4-6 for him to go and win the Sussex, which is probably the most likely target for him next. There's a lot of debates going on whether he's the best miler since Frankel, but he was just so impressive to watch, wasn't he?
Yeah, we watched the race from around about the 2 furlong marker up from the top, and I mean, we all went wow when he went. And I was actually with Harry Cobden, who was there on the day. And we thought he might have gone too soon, 2 out, but he just whooshed and went, and he won very well, didn't he? So that's one of the performances. I also think from a jockey performance, I love the fact that Kieran Schumacher won 2 races on outsiders, 22 and 25-1. A horse performance, Trawlerman, I love the way he outstayed everyone, which is exactly what you've got to do in a Ascot Gold Cup. And from a personal highlight, Venetian Sun, who won the Albany, and the horse had recorded the fastest first-time out 2-year-old speed rating of the season. And I was quite happy that won the Albany. So I thought it's a fantastic 5 days of racing.
Yeah, really was. So many stand-up performances. Like I say, let us know in the comments who your favourite performance was last week. And as I said, do give the video a like. Right, we've got plenty of racing, like I say, gents. Let's get right into it. And we start off with our races in focus. And we'll kick off with the big handicap from Newcastle, which is the Northumberland Plate, over 2 miles, a Class 2 event at 3:15 there. Who's Glen? Well supported here. Top of the market, 9-2. Papano is 5-1. East India Dock, 11-2. Golden Rules, 15-2. One Smooth Operator, 8-1. Duke of Oxford and Zanderbad, 11-1. 12-1. The rest of the field. Keith, I'll start with you. The money has come for Who's Glen all throughout the week. I've seen 16 down to 10s, down to 8s. Now we're looking at 9-2. Who are you with?
Well, it's interesting because him and Papano were the two sort of joint favourites coming out of decks. Decks have come out. Papano's in stall 1. Who's Glen's in 19. So I expect the money's going to keep coming for Who's Glen, because in the Northumberland Plate, as a sort of rule, you want to be a little bit higher. And I think the reason for that tends to be that you get the near side when you turn it in the straight and have that long run for home. In fact, you watch last year's race, you get a very good demonstration of that. The winner was One Smooth Operator, who was out the back turning in, as was a horse called Spirit Mixer. Spirit Mixer dove up the inside. One Smooth Operator came to the near side. He passed everything, won the race very well. Whereas Spirit Mixer, he met trouble. Everything in that group ended up going backwards. And it just isn't the place to be on that straight course at Newcastle. And that's why I think Who's Glen deserves to be favourite. But I've mentioned Spirit Mixer. He's in the race again. I just think you take Balding against the field. That's the other two Andrew Balding horses. Spirit Mixer's in 9. He has been second in this race before. He was second the year Trushan won it. So that's as close to being a formal winner as you can get, really, when the best stayer in the country at the time turns up against you. And he's on a lower mark than last year. And he comes in from the same two races, the Chester Cup and a race at Goodwood. Last year, I think, his RPRs were 88 and 90. In those two races this year, it's been 90 and 96. So he's off a slightly lower mark, coming in better form. He shaped better than 9th last year. I thought he shaped like he basically was good for finishing in the minor places last year. And he's in even better form off a better mark. So Spirit Mixer, you can get fancy prices. And given he's run well in the race before, is a smashing each way bet in a race where you're going to get extra places.
Yeah, Spirit Mixer currently 25-1, folks. I'm a big fan of Spirit Mixer, followed him quite closely. But yeah, fantastic each way selection there. Johnny, Willie Mullins with some entries in the field, some Irish entries. What do we make of these horses that he's put in the field?
I sort of feel they're just in there for the sake of being in there almost. I'm not sure they've done anything that really sets the world light against the others in the field. I mean, the two that sort of I think will run well, but aren't necessarily the obvious ones. Duke of Oxford, he was 3rd in the race last year, maybe. He's £5 higher this term, but you got Taron Langley claiming 7 even. He was behind Caballo Del Mar at Southern in April, and he's just been, and that horse has been improving no ends all season or last however many months. But ahead of him, when he was at Newcastle last time, he had another Irish horse called Tribal Star for Adrian McGuinness, and he was hampered in the run that day at Newcastle over this trip. And okay, he might have a bit to find on form, but there's definitely more to come from him. He's an improving 4-year-old, and I'd expect him to put in a really good performance for those coming over from Ireland. And Tribal Star would probably be my main each way selection here.
Another big price there, Tribal Star for the Northumberland Plate. And there's one trainer who has really targeted the race this year, and it's James Owen, who has 4 entries currently in the field, a couple towards the top of the market and a couple towards the bottom end. We've got extra places here. I'm sure James Owen hoping to fill those extra places.
Yeah, extra place in this Northumberland Plate, as you would expect. I was with James after he won the Chester Cup with East India Dock. And he does like a drink. We had a nice drink. And East India Dock, I'm surprised he's running here. I am surprised he's running here because he's only run 11 days after Royal Ascot. And, you know, a long distance race following a Chester Cup, which would have taken a lot out of him, following a hurdle career, juvenile hurdle career, which he did have a bit of a gap, I suppose, between the last hurdle race and the Chester Cup. But it's, you know, these staying flat races do tend to take a lot out of the horses, and I think the Cesarewitch is on the agenda for this horse later on in the year. So maybe this is the last idea of going for a big pot. But his horses are in great form. He had a nice winner, Carlisle, yesterday in Rogue Millions, and whatever he does at the moment, James Owen is definitely worth looking at. But I'm going to oppose these injured dog. I'm also going to oppose Papano. I'll be interested in the form experts, but I thought his price was so short based upon what he's achieved. And he had that run in the Triumph Hurdle where he was 150 to one shot and he pulled up. That's the only run he's had for Willie Mullins since being brought out to John Gosden's stable. I was surprised to see him as low as 5 to 1, I must admit. So I'm just going to go. It's just a selection rather than a bet, but I really hope Golden Rules runs well for Gareth Cheshire. He's an ebullient owner, really good on TV. You may remember him being interviewed by ITV 2 years ago when his horse finished second in this race. Thomas Faulkner, the trainer, trained 6 miles from Chepstow, took over from Deborah, and his horses have been running well this season. Golden Rules had a pipe opener last time, led for much of the way. They've booked Sylvester de Souza, which I like. And I just thought I'd take a chance with Golden Rules. He's lightly raced. He is 8, but he's obviously had his problems on a track and a race that we know he likes. I'm just going to give just a selection, really, to Golden Rules. I don't think I'll be backing it myself, but I do hope it wins.
Golden Rules are 3 there that we've got that taking on the top of the market. So some decent prices there from the panel. Our racing focus from York is what's next, which is the Criterion Stakes over 7 furlongs, a Group 3 contest at 225, where Lake Forest is topping the market 7 to 4, Formal 9 to 4, Paboros is 6 to 1, Prague 15 to 2, Lethal Levi and Room Service 12 to 1, 14 to 1 about Nostrum, and Quinault 22 to 1. Now, Formal was a horse that I was a big fan of as a 2-year-old for Stout, obviously now moving from Stout's Yard, but I was eyeing this horse up for a 3-year-old campaign. Took a while to warm up, obviously, with the Mill Reef run, which has turned out to be quite a good run, actually. But at Epsom, she looked absolutely electric, Jonny Pearson. Did you side towards the top of the market with the top 2, or is it more than just a 2-horse race?
It is more than a 2-horse race, but provided Lake Forest isn't feeling the ill effects from running at Royal Ascot last week, I think he's going to take an awful lot of beating. I think 7 furlongs is his optimal trip, as we saw down in Australia when he got the better of Lazat. And they're running in this quick because they want good ground. They don't want it to don't want to get caught up and bogged down in soft ground. And he's just got the best form in there. Formal was good at Epsom last time, but the quality of that race versus the quality of the race that Lake Forest has been running in are worlds apart. And I can't see Lake Forest not winning.
Okay, 1 vote for Lake Forest then. Keith, for yourself, is it the 2 horses or is there one against the field?
It's another vote for Lake Forest, ultimately. We've got to remember about this race is it's been moved to York from Newmarket as an obvious and direct trial for the City of York State, which is now a Group 1 at the Ebor meeting. So they've rejigged the pattern to make this race a trial for a big Group 1. You would well imagine that since he won that race in November in Australia, that Lake Forest has been, or since they announced the pattern changes, that Lake Forest has been aiming at that City of York Stakes, and this is just the route to it. He shaped pretty well, I thought, in the Queen Anne. He was out the back in a very easily the most steadily run race of the whole week at Ascot. Came through to finish 5th. Probably would have been 4th if he hadn't just got checked in his run. So, that sort of form coming into a race like this makes him stand out a mile. I will just put in a very brief note, given we've got the dead 8 here, for the absolute rag of the lot, actually, Keno, who's 2 from 2 at York. Both over 6, right enough, but one of them, best run of his life, winning a listed race here, and the other was in the big charity sprint that takes place here. So, very, very good course form. Has always looked a little bit slow for 6 sometimes. So I think that I can also give his run at Haydock last time as an excuse. He's never run well at Haydock, this horse, but he always runs well at York. And in a race where he's likely to go up near the front, behind Lake Forest, I'm not sure the form's all that good, and you could sneak in the 3. But that I'm mainly putting him up because putting up Lake Forest is a bit dull, but I think he'll win.
Yeah, okay, another vote for Lake Forest then. There is one horse that's fairly interesting. The Watnan horse is Paboros. I wanted to give that horse a quick mention because David Carr, one of our reporters, has sent a lovely video in of Ed Bethel talking about Paboros, and let's just hear what Ed Bethel had to say on his run on Saturday.
Ed, we're here with Paboros, a horse I know you're very keen on.
Yeah, he's an exciting horse. He's got a real progressive profile. We've always been excited about him since he was a 2-year-old. And he looked good at first. We've just been waiting for the ground, and please God, they'll open the heavens, and it'd be nice, good ground at York on Saturday. He's been very exciting. I think he could have a really exciting year this year for sure.
It's a difficult question, but how good could he be?
You may well ask. To be honest, I wouldn't want to say because I might make myself look stupid, but he looks like he's got a lot of talent anyway.
So we go. There's Ed Bethel's thoughts on Perboris, who runs on Saturday around 6-1 shot for the race. Ed, there are some interesting horses. Even Prague for Dylan Cunha, who has the first run for the season, is a brilliant target trainer, another interesting one. But it does look like it revolves around the top of the market.
Yeah, I agree. I think it revolves around the top two. We are going Super Boost here, which, if you don't know what that is, it's from 9 o'clock on Saturday. We boost every price of every horse up one on the ladder. So, for example, Lake Forest, if it's 7-4, we go 15-8. If Formal was 5-2, you'd get 11-4. So, in effect, the margin on the race is less than it would normally be. I thought Formal was worth following in. I thought that was her best performance at Epsom. I think she's only 3-year-old in the field. I thought she won very easily. There was lots of market support for her on the day, which is always a sign that they know that the horse has improved and is better than the competition. And the second has won a listed race at Carlisle on Wednesday, Sakara Sands, so has upgraded the form, albeit, she would expect her to win probably, but at least we know the form is okay. So I'm going to row in with Formal.
Okay, it's going to be 2-2 then. I fancy Formal as well. I think she's a really progressive filly who, I think is going to go on to much bigger things later down the line in the season. Right, we've got one more race in focus quickly to look at. And it does come from the Curragh. The Group 1 on Saturday is the Pretty Polly Stakes over 10 furlongs, where we see Whirl topping the market. The Oak second at 13-8. Kalpana 2-1. We might take the long way 15-2. Higher Leaves 12s. Jancis is 16-1. Servi, the French horse, is 16-1. And Magical Hope 25-1. Do let us know down in the comments who you fancy for this week's Pretty Polly Stakes. It's going to be a really interesting running this. Well, we kind of see the Group 1 horses now. We see the 3-year-olds meeting the older horses, Jonny Pearson. And again, it looks like a battle between the top two at the top of the market. Are we going in with the 3-year-olds or the older horses?
We won't be going in with 3-year-olds. I was a fan of the James O'Brien. We might take the long way going into Epsom, and she ran well, but not good enough to challenge the first couple home. Well, I thought got an absolutely cracking ride from Wayne Lorden on the front in the Oaks, and I think there's more to come from her. She was really good at York the time before that. She's definitely an improving 3-year-old, but I think the best form in the race is that of Kalpana for Andrew Balding, and obviously Colin Keane will be on board this time in his new role with Juddmonte. That third behind Los Angeles and Matt's probably much the strongest form in here, and given she's not even favourite for the race, which I would certainly make a favourite, I'd definitely be having a bet on her at the prices. I think she's rock solid. Let's say best form. The only slight doubt is whether she does want slightly further than 10 furlongs, but I'm willing to take a chance on that with the prices here.
Absolutely, yeah. Main target's going to be the Arc. We know that with Kalpana going later down the line, and she looked so exciting towards the back end of last season. Seemed the hype horse going into this season. Keith, are you rowing in with Jonny on Kalpana?
I am, yes. I think we're going to come to the Irish Derby later too, and I think the way that the Derby and the Oaks both played out, Whirl absolutely had the run of the Oaks, and yes, she was clear with Whirl and she's an improving horse, but absolutely had the run of that race last time, which is going to get overrated anyway because it was the Oaks. And again, watch out for this theme when we do the Irish Derby later. Kalpana is the ultimate slow lane horse. I mean, you could just list the hot races she's running. She's running the British Pretty Polly, the Ribblesdale, the Glasgow Stakes, September Stakes, Filly Emirs on Champions Day, and then the Tattersall's Gold Cup. That is how you build up a 4-year-old to races like this, the Pretty Polly next, and work on towards like the Arc and stuff. That's where she's going. That she's still fit enough to do herself justice, I thought, in that Tattersall's Gold Cup. Absolutely. She was a length and a half behind Los Angeles, and that was with Sheen Murphy just doing all he needed to finish third. He would have dropped his hands if he knew, if White Birch wasn't right behind him to take third of him. She's better than that even. And that was, effectively a very similar sort of course and distance to this. So I just think she should be favourite.
Okay, yeah, agreed. And is it going to be a 4? I've got a vote for Kalpana, but is Ed going to make it a 4-time here?
Yeah, Kalpana. I mean, ever since she won her first group race, which was the Unibet September Stakes, I've been following her very closely. And as we all know, she's got the form in the book. I'm interested whether we think the ground might be just a little bit quick for her. I don't know. But I think she should win.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. 4 votes for Kalpana, then in the Pretty Polly. We're going to just have a quick message from the Racing Post Plus advert here, and then after that, we'll be covering the rest of the ITV racing card on Saturday. Welcome back to the Racing Postcast with the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. And yes, do sign up to Racing Post Plus. So many benefits signing up to the Racing Post Plus subscription. Do look at that down in the description. Right, we move on then to the rest of the ITV card, and we go to Newcastle for the 140 there, which is a 6 furlong handicap. Class 2 event, Durham Castle 7-2, Aram Rams 4-1, Drama 6-1, Pocklington 7, Strike Red 9s, Fresh 11s 12-1. Bar these. This is a money back if second or third in this race with Unibet. Terms and conditions will apply there. Keith, I want to come to you first. An RPR of 102 at Windsor on his last start for Durham Castle. He looks open to a lot more improvement. He's a fairly lightly raced 4-year-old sprinter. What do we make of this?
I mean, he's exactly the sort you put in favourite when you're doing a tissue for this race and work backwards. He did win quite well at Windsor. That they tend to be decent races that have a reasonable habit of working out. So yeah, I can see why he's in his favourite. I'm not backing him because he's the price he deserves to be. I don't see him as any more progressive than your average horse that would get put in this position. In fact, the time before he won at Windsor, he ran at Haydock behind a horse called Cody Lyon. That was a good race and I liked it. And I actually put up Sergeant Wilco for that race. He went off a monster price in the end. He went off 25-1, but finished 4th. He led on his side and won his side, I think. And similarly, the time before at Newcastle, in a more valuable race than even this, he'd been 4th when he still looked like he was working up to fitness. And he was 4th that day to a horse called Ferris, who's single-figure odds for the Chipchase this afternoon. So, you know, he's got better form than that makes out. He's got a decent enough draw in 12. You sort of want him maybe be towards that stand side and therefore higher stalls at Newcastle. And I thought there was a lot going for him at, well, at double figure odds. You can back him at 3 times the price of Durham Castle. And he's already got his scalp, really, from Haydock. So I thought Sergeant Wilco was one to stick with.
Yeah, I might have been called Ollie Mers at the start of the show. We're definitely singing off the same hymn sheet this week, Keith. Jonny Pearson, I was going to say the King Power horses, both of them were quite interesting, both course and distance winners. Was there any strong opinion from you in here?
I mean, as Keith said, Durham Castle is his favourite for a reason. It's, it doesn't take a genius to pick that one out. But, I mean, the one that's interesting, but I won't be backing given he's not been seen since August last year, was Pocklington for Jeff Oldroyd. He's 3 lengths. He ran at Group 1 Royal Ascot. Okay, didn't finish too close to Incheon, but he's been behind Elite Status, Incheon, who was sort of 2 of the better sprinters last year. Last run, he was only 3 lengths behind JM Jungle, and that form, as we'll come to in some other races shortly, is looking pretty strong. And depending on how fit he is, I think he'll more than do himself justice here. And I won't be having a bet, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on him and see what happens with you for the rest of the season.
Okay, Pocklington potentially 1 for Jonny Pearson there. And then Nicholson, like I say, money back is 2nd or 3rd in this race.
Yeah, that's right. 14 runners and 5 of them have won over the course and distance. As you would expect, any trainer that had a horse that's won over this course and distance would be looking at this race as 25,000 to the winner. Good day's racing at Newcastle, good prize money. My eye was taken to a Ram. I said earlier on about Royal Ascot horses coming back. That's more of the middle distance and stayers. The sprinter, as Kevin will, as we would be able to see here, it doesn't really matter if they come back within a week. And I think a Ram's got a really good chance here. 6th in the Wokingham, just beaten 3 lengths. that was good form. He's held his form well this year. Been running against the same sort of horses and running there or thereabouts. Sean Levy takes the ride. Just thought probably worth a crack. He hasn't won at Newcastle, but has run well on 3 all-weather tracks. He's come second at Kempton, second at Southall, and he's won at Wolves. So shouldn't be a reason why he won't take to Newcastle. Perhaps a little bit tight in the betting, but that'll be my selection.
Okay, Ram 4-1 for Ed. Sergeant Wilco for Keith Melrose, and a tentative selection of Pocklington for Jonny Pearson. Let's go on then to the Chipchase Stakes, the Group 3 sprint on the card. 2-10 from Newcastle here. Kinda Blue is currently 5-4 with Unibet. Ali and Arby 6-1. Spycatcher 6-1. Ferris is 7-1. Diligent Harry 15-2. Fair Angelica 11s. 12-1 Anaf and 16-1 bar these. Jonny Pearson, we were messaging on the day of the French Derby where Kinda Blue ran in the sprint out there, and let's just say the start out there was slightly diabolical.
I mean, what was it again? It was in the stalls, wasn't it? And it sort of just didn't go. I can't remember quite what happened off the top of my head, but I remember it not being pretty viewing for anyone who might have backed him. And there was a lot of questions about whether the start should have actually happened when it did. But I mean, again, as with the previous races, favourites, clear to see why he's favourite, but not one I'd be wanting to get involved at the price. He's probably better at Ascot, and Newcastle and Ascot do sort of have similar profiles as courses, and you can see why people put them together a lot of the time. But again, was it 11-8 or something? Not something I'd entertain backing. And I was interested in Ferris for Jack Shannon, but again, he's not been missed in the market either, and I'll probably sit it out. But Ferris would be a tentative selection I had to have on his course and winner, distance winner last time out. He's on the up. He's won his last 3 races all this season, or this year even, and there's not too much downside about him, and he's definitely better for the all-weather than he is in turf, as far as I can tell. And he'd be the one to challenge Kinda Blue for me.
Okay, Keith, yeah, Kinda Blue. I think a lot of people after that run at Shanty would have been looking, going, the July Cup market, maybe this horse stays at a decent enough price. And let me tell you, the horse was at a decent price, and that probably is the target after this a couple of weeks later. Reared in the stalls was what it says on the Race Post website just before, and it was a really interesting one. I'm not sure James Doyle was too happy. What did we make of that, and do we think he's worth taking on?
Well, I think he's basically a horse worth taking on away from Ascot, isn't he? I mean, he's got an Ascot pedigree. He was always, in fact, after he finished, was it 3rd or 4th in last year's Commonwealth Cup, I says that's going to win the 2025 champion sprint. That obviously he won the 2024 running. I was a little bit. He's progressed faster than I thought, basically. But why did he not run last week in the Diamond Jubilee? He's an Ascot horse. He's owned by Wathnan. Yes, they might. Oh, we've got a couple for it. They throw everything at Ascot, the Wathnan lot. They just want horse at Ascot. This horse didn't run at Ascot last week because he wasn't ready a week ago. And for that reason, I would be taking him on at these prices. I nearly got my fingers burnt doing similar with, I've forgotten the horse. Why could I forget that horse's name? That ran in the race last year. The good 7 furlong horse that wants soft ground. Everybody knows him. Yes, that's the one. Kinross. How did I forget Kinross's name for 30 seconds? Just one of those brain fades. But anyway, I tried to get him beat in this race last year, nearly got my fingers burnt. He did not look like a horse who'd be ready, and I think Kinda Blue's the same. I'm going to put Anaf in. He ran last week at Royal Ascot, but to be honest, I think they were there as a bit of a bonus. The Chipchase was always going to be more of his sort of race. He does struggle a little bit in the Group 1 sprints, but won loads and loads of money in the lesser group races. His course form at Newcastle is very good. Course form figures of, I think, 1-1-4-2-3-2, including a second in this race. This was always a race for him. And they've made the price by running him at Ascot. He missed the break there. He was never in it, really. He was on the wrong side anyway, in all likelihood. So lots of reasons to write off that one at Ascot. Without it, he's 7-1 for this, I think. And you can back him at nearly double that. So, yeah, I thought enough, especially with the 3 places on offer each way, was a really solid bet here.
Okay, enough for Keith Melrose then in Chipchase. And Ed, Super Boost. So I have a Super Boost race for the weekend.
Yeah, another Super Boost, 2 Super Boosts this weekend on the ITV races, this being the first, actually. The second is the 225, which we've already previewed. The Chipchase, that's what I used to do at Loughborough University after a few beers. We used to go on a Chipchase, try to get as much carbohydrates as possible. I think Kinda Blue is has got everything in his favour. I mean, I can't remember too many Group 1 winners coming to this race, therefore having a £7 penalty. He must be one of the few that's tried that. The only worry you'd have is exactly what Keith has said. Is he ready? James Fanshawe will be thinking of Group 1 targets later in the year, but he is well clear of these on ratings. I expect him to win. James Fanshawe doesn't just go for this race with no hopers. He's had 3 horses running the Chipchase this century. He's had a second, a third, and an eighth. And I'm going to say something that kind of might sound counterintuitive, but if Kind of Blue is odds on, I'd back him. If he drifts, I wouldn't, because I think if he isn't ready and he needs a run, the market will know.
Yeah.
At the moment, he's been backed from 2s into 11 to 8 on the basis that he is the best horse in the race. So I know that sounds probably a bit counterintuitive and a bit silly, but if he was round evens 10 to 11, that would make me more confident.
I do think this is his prep for the July Cup. Unibet currently have him as 15-2 for the July Cup in a couple of weeks. Really looking forward to actually heading to Newmarket July course for the first time to see that race live. Let's move on then to our next race, which is the consolation race to the Northumberland Plate, the 240 at Newcastle. And Contacto and Godsend are 9-2, Trifans 5-1, Savrolas 13-2, Caprello 17-2, Gibbside Humble Spark and Sheridan 12-1, 14-1 bar these. We were speaking off air about this race, and Jonny Pearson hasn't got too strong opinion. I haven't got a strong opinion. Keith Melrose doesn't have a strong opinion. Ed Nicholson, can you give us a little bit of a flavour what to expect in a Northumberland Vase?
Well, the first thing to expect is an extra place with Unibet, 20 maximum runners, and you would expect an extra place. And I think you'll need it, because this looks one of the most competitive and difficult races to analyse that I think I've ever had since being on the Racing Postcast. It's a really difficult race. Any number of horses could win. I'm personally not going to have a bet in the race, but I did look at the form, and Godsend looks just a typical Sam Hart Prescott improving handicapper. Again, probably at the wrong end of the market. If you're looking to have a bet, it'd be around about 5-1, 6-1. He will have to run off a career high, but I doubt whether we've seen the stop to this horse's improvement. Had one run this season, getting ready for this race. Luke Morris on board, drawn 3, which might be a bit of a risk. We spoke about the draw, or Keith did for the main race. And I've watched the last few replays, and it's not just the way they come into the straight and go across. It's in the first few furlongs, the pack just go across. And unless you can get your horse to get out, you can find yourself 7 or 8 horses down, which then gives you a more difficult challenge. So that would be a slight worry, but Luke Morris is anything but not experienced, so I think he'll be able to hopefully get Godsend out. But yeah, it's a really difficult race. You need the extra place. Godspeed if you are having a bet, but Godsend is the bet.
Yeah, as you can tell, a race that the panel aren't too keen on this weekend. But hopefully the final race we look at from Newcastle will be a race that there's a few selection, which is the 345, the 7 furlong Pertemps Network Handicap. And looking at the market currently, we have Rare Change as the 3-1 favourite, Native Warrior 9-2, Dossman 13-2, Telemark 7-1, City Walk 8-1, double figures about the rest of the field in here. For you then, Jonny Pearson, Native Warrior was dual entry earlier in the week. I had an entry at York in the Group 3 there, but comes here with this handicap mark, looking to extend that excellent week that White Man had last week at Royal Ascot. What do we make of this?
I just want to take him on this race. I feel he's been running well. I think one at a big price I think might run well is Kingdom Come. Been fairly disappointing all season. Can't hide away from that. He's got fair form at the course. He's rated £6 higher than this a year ago. And if Safi Osborne's a decent jockey, and if he's decent draw, he's got a decent draw in 11. And if he can get back to somewhere near his best, he should go well at a bit of a price. But the other one that catches the eye is lightly raced Dossman for Roger Varian and Sylvester de Souza. I'd argue he's probably drawn on the wrong side here based on how they tend to ride at Newcastle on the straight course. But last summer at Newmarket, it was 2 3/4 lengths behind Ombudsman, who obviously was arguably performance of the week at Royal Ascot just a week and a half ago, and if he's anywhere near to that level, I think he can put in a really solid performance here, and they would be the two that I'd want to be with if I had to select two here.
Yeah, Dustman's really interesting at first. I have to agree with you there, Johnny. Ed, what about you in here? What did you make of the market?
Well, first of all, extra place. There's a horse here I really like. I'm a little bit concerned about the situation and circumstances which find him running here, but I'm still going to back him, and that's Rare Change. He's got to do things that he hasn't done of late, which is win on the all-weather. He's got to win over 7 furlongs, which he hasn't done. But he has won 3 out of 4. He's got and he has been a revelation since he's been gelded. Anyone that saw him win at Pontefract last week couldn't be anything but impressed. He was held up off a fast pace. Partisan Hero came and took it up, and he went past that horse. He's got some good form, albeit maybe at a different distance, like he was standing still. Finley Marsh didn't have to resort to any action rather than just push him out, and he won easily. In fact, he probably won too easy, which is why he's running here with a £6 penalty, because he'll probably go up quite a bit. I thought over fast run 6 furlong in a handicap, and Keith knows his handicap is more than I. He had a big prize in him, so I'm a bit surprised I've come here, but they obviously think he's going to go up a bit, and he's running with the penalty here. Incidentally, I just wanted to see how Richard Hughes gets on when he runs horses quickly with a £6 penalty. So I did a bit of research. This century, he's run 20 horses on turf with a £6 penalty. 6 of them have won for a profit of £5.30 at SP. But funnily enough, over the last couple of years, 4 out of 5 have won. And when you add in the fact that they're favourite, 5 out of 13 have won. So he obviously doesn't go to the well too often with these horses if he thinks they're going to be badly handicapped in the future. So the fact that he is going again with Rare Change, and let's face it, is a £25,000 race. So why wouldn't you? I just thought this horse has got to. If he's 7 furlongs is okay, if the all weather is okay, and he's racing off the highest rating of 89 now. So a lot of negatives, but I just thought the way the horse ran and won, it was one of my eye catchers of the week. I put it down in my notebook. So I'm going to follow this one in. Incidentally, when you're looking at when you look at Richard Hughes compared to the rest of the kind of trainers, it's about a 40% record of winning with £6 penalty horses, but he's a little bit lower than that. But I thought Rare Change was a good bet. Okay,
Rare Change then. Fred Nicholson. Right, we've got 2 races to cover from York on the ITV card, which is the Basti Equiworld Dubai Mile Handicap. The 155 there, I don't need to give you the distance. Archivist is the 6-4 favourite. Cadam 3-1. Madame de Seville 6-1. Capital Guarantee 11-1. Stanage also 11s. 12-1 Barley and Nordic Farm 14s. Bar here. The ever so consistent Archivist at the top of the market. Jonny Pearson, what do we make of this?
I mean, it's not a race I've got a particularly strong opinion on. Obviously, that race at Leicester behind Stars in Our Eyes is looking pretty good. But, okay, he won well last time at Leicester again, but there's a lot of seconds to his name, which puts me off backing something at quite such a short price. For all he was impressive last time, that was a race at Leicester. It was a maiden. It's not going to be a strong form as what he's up against here. The Robert Edery horse, Madame de Seville, is quite interesting. It was pretty good at Nottingham last time. Machine Murphy stays on board. He's won on her before, and I can see her running quite a big race here. And that's the one that I'd want to be with if I had to be with one.
Yeah, and the man who is keen on Madame de Seville, and he's already told me off air, is Mr. Ed Nicholson. Please, Ed, just further that case slightly.
Yeah, I think Madame Seville's on a winnable handicap mark. Machine Murphy booked. He's only ridden the horse twice, won and came second last time. Dropped a little bit in distance, which I think is significant because at this distance at Nottingham would have been the winner. And actually, if you look at the excellent Racing Post quote section, you'll see that the jockey, after winning over 7 furlongs, said, "This is the distance this horse will excel at." So having gone over a mile and a half a furlong, this is less than a mile in effect. So I think distance is right. I think Machine Murphy will come there late. He'll probably be thinking he got there too soon, which it didn't look like was going to be the case. But Boyfriend not outbattled him. That's unfair. Just improved past him in the closing half a furlong. I think given that Oisin's booked again, and there's been market support as well, 10s into 7s. I think this is the one.
Okay, Madam Savine then for Ed Nicholson. Keen on that one there. It's been a while since I've bought in Keith Melrose. It's about to be time because we're going to go on to the 3 o'clock at York, which is the old Basti Equiworld Dubai Dash Handicap over 5 furlongs, a Class 2 event where JM Jungle is the 100-30 favourite. Regal Envoy is 7-2 along with Habuba. Azure Angel 11-2. Squealers 17-2. Democracy Dilemma is 9-1. Double figures bar these. Keith Melrose, like I say, it's been a while since we've heard your voice, but this is your time to take the floor. Tell us about this sprint.
Yeah, well, the first thing I say is I'm not absolutely certain I'll bet in it. It's a great race. There's only 9 winners, which you'd think for a race like this you're going to get more, but it's really, really deep. First thing I wanted to bring up was about Habuba. Now, I got a new column that started this week every Wednesday in the Racing Post called The Form Hackers. Jonny contributes to all the guys in the form and tipping team, handicappers, spotlight writers, analysts, are all giving me the strong bits of form. And this one, the Habuba race at York last time that he won at 28-1, is a race that surprised us all, really. And I've mentioned it in the column. We've got an unheralded winner. He was 28-1 that day. Bergerac and GM Jungle were placed. They were looking relatively exposed for these big sprints. Miss Attitude was in there, as was Zaire. But it's worked out so well. Zaire was 4th in the Holyrood House. Miss Attitude run really well at Windsor. GM Jungle won the Dash. Bergerac's won since. It's a really, really good bit of form. And I think it just goes to show that sometimes it's the track where a race takes place. It's as big a thing as the horses involved sometimes, to give you a big clues to what's going to work out. But yeah, I'll be trying to find races like that all summer in that column. And Habuba's got a real chance again. Clearly a horse going the right way. Beat a Ram the time before at Kempton. So just clearly a very, very progressive horse. I think GM Jungle and Regal Envoy, who are also high up in the market, obviously have to respect them. And Regal Envoy is such a likeable horse, and GM Jungle's so fast. They might have done their winning in races like this. So Azure Angels, a horse I've got my eye on. She won well at Redcar last time. I think she wants to stick to flat tracks and straight tracks, and she'll be interesting on those. So she's one I may, if the price is right, back her. And another one who regular listeners will absolutely know that I've backed far more often than I should have is Democracy Dilemma. He ran in the Dash. And I think Tom Eves is on him today. And I think what happens with Democracy Dilemma, he is so fast that most jockeys, when they get on him, it's like if you or I just got put in a Ferrari to give it a spin. They just go mad on this horse because he's so quick. And the Dash was the same. Rossa Ryan rode him that day. Obviously, Ryan's a very, very good jockey. But he did a 10-second flat furlong while tacking across to the near side rail, just because he could. Just because he's on one of the fastest horses in training. So the only jockey that won on this horse last year, later on in the season anyway, was Tom Eves, who showed a bit more restraint at Beverley, and he won a listed race. So I'm interested that Tom Eves is on him again, and he's available at pushing double figures. So I imagine if I do bet in the race, it's going to be Democracy Dilemma or it's going to be Azure Angel. But this is a cracking race and one of the races of the weekend.
There you go. Look, I'm keen to move on to the Irish Derby, but I think Keith has summed that sprint up absolutely perfect there. Everything that we needed to know with regards to that sprint. Did anyone have anything to add on the sprint other than that?
I agree completely. Democracy Dilemma, for exactly the reasons that Keith has given. I think he'll enjoy the track and he could make all.
Absolutely. There we go. As easy as that. Keith Melrose is working out the sprints for us, exactly what we needed. Right, we are going to quickly look at the Irish Derby and get the best bet shortly after this.
Want betting on the horses to be anything but flat? With an app that impresses every time out. You're on. Want to watch live streaming of races in the UK, Ireland and around the globe? And get a chance to win even bigger with 3 Uniboosts every day on any horses you want. Unibet, you're on.
Welcome back to the final part of this week's Racing Postcast, brought to you by the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. We've got one more race to look at, which is a race on Sunday. We had to get this covered, which is the Irish Derby from the Curragh. 4:10 there on Sunday, Group 1 action. And Lambourne, the Derby winner, is back. 8-11 favourite with Unibet. Tennessee Studs 11-4. Pride of Arras is 6-1. Green Impact 7-1. Puppet Master 10-1. Lazy Griff 10-1. 33-1. Bar these. Could be quite quick. It could be a matter of just Lambourne wins and we move on to the anything else and naps. Jonny Pearson, you're the man. We get you on this for the as an Irish handicapper to look at these races. Is Lambourne just going to go point and shoot and win this?
I mean, I really think he should win this. I was really fancied him at Epsom. Obviously, that paid off. I think he's actually done a little bit of a disservice by most. I think he's a lot better than people are giving him credit for. He just has such a lazy way of racing that the jockey really has to keep him up to his work. But he's not actually exerting himself and using up loads of energy. The jockey just looks busier because the horse is racing lazily. I'd be surprised if he didn't win the race. But, you know, looking outside of him, obviously you've got Tennessee Star, who's finished well at Epsom. You've got Lazy Griff in there, ran second behind him at Chester and Epsom. The one that's caught my eye is Green Impact for Jessica Harrington. The horses are running really, really well. She had a Group 3 winner at Naas yesterday, beating a Juddmonte horse that I was really quite keen on. It was 2 from 2, and that they finished quite well clear of the third, and that looks properly strong piece of form. She had a listed winner at Ayr on Saturday at 50 to 1 with the horse was Saratoga Special. And, you know, he clearly wasn't fully tuned up when he ran in the Guineas at Newmarket. He won well last time. I'd expect him to take another step forward and give a pretty good account of himself, but I'd be surprised if any of them can beat Lambourne.
Okay, yeah. Keith, do you share a similar opinion? The fact that Lambourne will probably go and win this again?
I mean, he's 4-5 and he should be favourite. And when was the last time you got the sort of the Derby 1, 2, 3 all going for the Irish Derby?
Yeah,
I think that tells you a little bit about what they expect to happen when they've got to beat older horses. If I'm honest, I don't think the Derby's up to much. I thought there was quite a lot of bad rides in the Derby, and Lambourne got one of the good ones. So even though there's no question he was the best horse in the race that day, I think there would be a lot more misgivings expressed about what he did that day if it hadn't been in the Derby. So yeah, I'll be looking to, there isn't an awful lot else among these horses that's come out. Johnny's mentioned Green Impact there. That win at Leopardstown is pretty good. Yeah, he is one that has got a bit of form that could be viewed that way. But I also thought, I was on Pride of Arras in the Derby. The Dante was impressive.
Yeah.
And 6 in the last 8 in the Derby had run in the Dante. That's an impressively, you couldn't design a bit of form bombing more than that. But it can't be that bad, because otherwise it's 2 or 3 standard deviations worse than your average Dante. That doesn't really happen. So I think maybe with his form, Rafe Beckett described him coming down the hill at Epsom as like an ostrich on ice. And I thought that was absolutely apt. You look at him, his jaws everywhere. He plainly didn't like it. It was the third run of his life. Mm-hmm. Curragh's more galloping. And it's what's also interesting here for Pride of Arras and also the Sardinadan, who's running in the race for Rafe Beckett and Mark Chan, is the horses are not running. I thought Stanhope Gardens was the horse to take out the Derby, the Beckett stablemate Mark Chan owned. Yeah. They're going to go down and trip with him. And instead of that, they're running this Sardinadan. They could have run Stanhope Gardens. It's literally the same owner and trainer. And this horse was also second to Amalok in the Cocked Hat when he was last seen. Beckett also trains Amalok. It won the King Edward VII at Ascot recently. So they know they must really quite like this Amalok. And I think it's interesting if they do run Sardinadan that they're doing so in this race, given the other options they had to run up against him. But, look, if he's 66 to 1, you might have a tiny bit on him each way or play him on world pools and all the exotic bets and whatnot. He's not a real strong suggestion. I'm just of the view that the Derby form, while we can get after it before we know for sure that it's a below average Derby, we should do that. And I think either Green Impact or Pride of Arras is the way to go about that, but I'm going to stick with the Dante form because that's what I liked before Epsom.
Okay, yeah, Rafe Beckett horse potentially interesting in the Irish Derby this week. And Ed, is it just a simple Lambourne win here for you?
Yeah, Lambourne wins.
Well, there you go. Keep it as simple as that. I've just got a quick question. I'm actually going to come to Keith on this because we've got an article in the Racing Post today that talks about the Irish Derby race card. And David Jennings, I've got it here, has written a nice piece where we talk about the quality of the rest of the card. And Tom Siegel was quite vocal on the Epsom card and how poor it is bar the actual Derby itself. And a lot of punters, when they go racing, some will want these big handicaps and competitive races, but some will want that Champions Day card where you've got Group 1 after Group 1 after Group 1. How do you see race cards? Do you want to see more Group 1s or do you want to see more of these handicaps? How do you prefer it?
I mean, I'd probably bet more handicaps. You summed it up there in the question. Some punters want it one way, some punters want it t'other. We cater to both. We have Champions Day, we have Irish Champions Weekend, we have Arc Weekend, we have the Breeders' Cup, we have the Ebor meeting, which has got everything. We have Royal Ascot. Everybody gets what they want. I don't know what's the people, DJ's got a call up to Phil and he's going to say what he wants to say, but maybe Ireland. I know the Epsom Derby, the Carberry Epsom for the Derby Day is, it's bar the Derby, it's not great. But again, I don't notice because it's got the dash and the 3-year-old dash, and I want to bet in them. Yeah. Should we let the big races breathe sometimes? And I think in some cases we should. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think Richard Forrestal's in the post today making comment about jigging about the Irish Derby card for the sake of Whirlpool, which is another interest. That's an interesting conversation to have. I'm a big Whirlpool fan, as it happens. But yeah, I don't think there should be a divine right to have, big show. It's not some pay-per-view wrestling event. Sometimes the big cards with the biggest races should let the biggest races stand on their own. And it's entirely up to courses and the pattern committees as to what it should look like.
Yeah, Brian Kavanagh's quote, the chief executive of the Curragh, said, "We have quality handicaps with loads of runners, and I'm happy with that." Well, I think a lot of people who are going will be happy with that. So, Keith summed up perfectly there. Getting the best of both worlds is what we need in flat racing.
And I think Brian Kavanagh used to be chair of the European Pattern Committee as well. So he's got his foot in a lot of the camps there.
Yeah, I've been to the Irish Derby card the last couple of years, and I'm quite happy with the way it's a good card. It is. Right, gents, we will now just get anything else for the weekend, anything away from any of the race we've talked about already. Jonny Pearson, is there anything from you this week?
Yeah, I've got a couple of horses that I like that are actually running on, potentially running on Saturday. Well, one of them will be running on Saturday. There's also the race on Sunday that's caught my eye. On Saturday, you've got actually one on Friday as well, so to speak. But on Saturday, you've got the 6.5 furlong, it's not quite 6 furlong, 60-yard Anglesey, some of the Anglesey Stakes, Group 3 for 2-year-olds over in Ireland. And Flushing Meadows there's only 5 runners. Flushing Meadows is 4-6 favourite for Aidan O'Brien. And from what I saw, Flushing Meadows looks to be one of his best 2-year-olds by somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up better than Gustard, who was obviously one of the best 2-year-olds saw at Ascot last week. But on Friday, a horse that was 4th behind him called Puerto Rico, also for the same connections, has got Ryan Moore on board in a 2-year-old maiden. I'd expect that form to work out nicely. So he's one definitely to keep an eye on. And then on Sunday at 2:55, it's a mile listed race. You've got Duckadilly and Red Letter both entered. Duckadilly is trained by Daniel McCocklin, or however you say his name, and he won't be particularly well known. He's quite young, won't have many horses. But the horse won on maiden on debut last year, hadn't been seen until June at Fairy House earlier this month. Really impressive, really sort of taking presence of the horse. Red Letter, obviously, you've got in there. He was second behind Barnabara last time. He went and won the Group 3 at Naas yesterday. And it's definitely been between the two of them. But Duckadilly, he's still got that aura of he could be anything. And it'll be really interesting if he does run, or if she does run even, what level she might end up being capable of. She's definitely one to keep an eye on for the season going forwards.
Okay, there you go. One from each day at the Curragh this week, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday from Jonny Pearson. Keith Melrose, anything else from you?
Yes, probably two of my better bets actually on the weekend, coming from off the telly. One's at Chester, 3:05. So the race Solar Acclaim won a couple of weeks ago at Chester. He was drawn 1 and he went and won quite handily. A horse called Alzahir was in that race. It was his first run back at Sprints for a long, long time. He, unlike Solar Acclaim, was in 1. Alzahir was in 11. He was, so drawn wide at Chester immediately, that's you're up against it. He was 3rd or 4th last turning in. Then he got chopped off as he tried to dive up the rail, but he still finished 4th, only beaten a length and a half by the rest. I just thought, and he's now installed 4 in this race, in a race that has got Solar Acclaim in it, but he's had his rise for winning that race last time, and now Solar Acclaim's in the car park. So there's just a lot going for Alzahir, I thought, in that 3:05 at Chester. I ultimately think if this horse is going to win loads of sprints, he might have to go to stiffer tracks, But, everything's right for him here, and he has run well at Chester, so he's going in for me. And the one horse I'm definitely backing this weekend is running at York. It's running in the 450, and it's Top Warrior. It's a Beckett horse again, King Power. And we've talked before about, we've talked about hot form and what makes it. The form of the Musselburgh race that Top Warrior ran in last time, it doesn't yet look brilliant. The winner, Luna Inverness, that's come out and run well. The third has run really well at Redcar last week, and the fourth from that race, running the same race at Redcar, didn't get the run of things. So the form's not immediately caught light, but I think it's good. And Top Warrior, I thought, shaped as well as the winner in that race. That was at Musselburgh, and now this horse runs at York. Only the fourth run of that horse's life was a Musselburgh run, and now gets a chance. And it's a big field at York, but I would say, in terms of what's in the race, it's an 0-85. It's not the highest quality race you'll ever see, and I think Top Warrior's got a few more wins left in him, so I'll be putting up Top Warrior on the 450 at York.
Lovely. Ours are here in the 305 at Chester, and at the 450 at York is Top Warrior for Keith Melrose. And Ed, you're going to make it easy. We're going to move on to naps, or have you got anything else?
There is one horse I wanted to mention who put up a really terrific speed figure at Kempton on the all-weather. Cosy Bello runs in the 410 at Chester. He's only had 2 runs for Charlie Fellows. I was there that day, and that Charlie was very excited by the horse. 2 out of 2 on the all-weather, first time on turf. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. But it was a pretty good speed figure that day. So I'll be backing him.
Yeah, Cosy Bello, 2 from 2 there, 410 at Chester for Ed Nicholson. Right then, let's move on to the best bets for this week, and then plenty of racing on ITV. Let's see who the panel fancy this weekend. And Jonny Pearson, you can kick things off. Who is the best bet for you?
Yeah, the best bet for me is going to be at the Curragh, and it's going to be Kalpana in the Pretty Polly Stakes.
Okay, perfect. Kalpana in the Pretty Polly for Jonny Pearson. I'm going to be with Formal in the Criterion Stakes, the 225 at York. I think she's got plenty of improvement in her, and I think she's going to take another step forward. Ed Nicholson, your best bet, please.
Yeah, Madame de Savagna in the 155 at York. Second last time out. O'Shea Murphy back on again. I think this mile is exactly right, and be around about 7-1 as well.
Okay, Madame Savine for Ed Nicholson, and Keith Melrose finishes off.
Well, my nap material was going to be either siding with Jonny on Kalpana or taking you on with Lake Forest in a Criterion. So it sort of forced my hand a little bit. Let's do it. Let's go for Democracy Dilemma in the 3 o'clock at York. Even though, there's many ways I could bet in that race. That is a horse that I think is being underplayed.
You gave such a good synopsis of that race, Keith. So, yeah, absolutely. I can completely agree with that. Democracy Dilemma in the 3 o'clock at York for Keith Melrose. There's our best bets on screen now. Hopefully, we can land a couple of winners for the weekend. Thanks very much for tuning in to this week's Racing Postcast. Mr. Stevens will be back next week. He'll be talking all things Eclipse next week. Really looking forward to the Curragh Eclipse. It's going to be a fantastic race as ever. Until then, big thanks to Keith Melrose, Jonny Pearson, Ed Nicholson, and our producer, Bell. Do hit that like button if you haven't already. Plenty of racing this weekend. You don't need to bet in every single race. The MO here at the Racing Post and at Unibet is only gamble with money you can afford to lose. Do gamble responsibly. But thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you very soon.